You're very welcome to another episode of the Scaling Your Business podcast. For this episode, we're joined by David Mullins, all the way over on the west coast of Ireland. David, you're very welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Delighted to be here.
Delighted to have you. Typical fashion with the show, focus on three main areas: early influences, challenges, pivotal moments, and make it a conversation throughout. So, if I've done my research correctly, you grew up in Galway?
Yeah, that's correct.
What was life like growing up out west in Ireland? Any standout favorite memories?
It was a lot of fun. We have a big family, so I'm the eldest of six. So there was always a lot of people around, not just siblings, but like friends and cousins and stuff. So it was always a packed house and a lot going on. And sport was always a huge, big part of our household. My dad and my uncles would have played sport and been obsessed with it, and same with us then, as we just kind of inherited it. So it was always a huge big part of our family growing up.
Have you got a favorite sports that you watch or play?
I'll watch too much, to be honest with you. Like I played soccer, Gaelic football. That were the ones I did most. But I've also even played American football for DCU, and I played. Wow. I do jiu-jitsu, still compete in jiu-jitsu as well.
Nice.
So, but I'll trust me. I'll watch pretty much everything.
Interesting. So you grew up in a fairly sporty household. This kind of conversation will be based around sports and exercise psychology. But before we get to that, who do you think had the biggest impact on you growing up? Any sports stars or family members or local business people that had a big impact or influence on you while you were growing up?
I'd say it's my dad. So he was a really good player, like in soccer, Gaelic football, and hurling. He was really good. But he was my coach then when I was a kid as well. Coached my under 12 soccer team, coached me from 17 up in Gaelic football. So he coached lots of teams around the area in Galway. So he was definitely an influence, because obviously when your dad's a coach and is your coach, that's an influence. But I liked his coaching style. As I moved on and played at different levels and played for different people, I realized that his coaching style was really good. And it was he created a kind of a culture and an environment that, you take it for granted when you're young, but then you realize in other places that it's actually, that has been formed, that culture, and that is not an accident. And, so I appreciate that stuff. I got even more appreciation as I got older and got into the sports psychology side of things.
Do you mind me asking, now looking back as a sports psychologist, what do you think was good, or the fundamentals that your dad laid down that made him a good coach?
I think one of the big things was the togetherness in a squad, the feeling like we're all part of it. So not everyone's going to play, but even the lads that weren't playing, like they weren't even getting game time a lot of the time, they still felt like they were a big part of the whole thing. It was a fun part, fun dressing room, fun place to be. You'd look forward to training, you'd look forward to matches, look forward to hanging out with the lads. It was a really positive, just a fun environment. But then there was rules as well laid down that, you had to adhere to, and people knew that if they went outside of that, that there would be consequences. So it wasn't just, all nicey. There was some boundaries as well that were enforced. So everyone knew where they stood. Everyone knew their role within the team. That when a team went out, everyone was clear on what their role was, what they were asking themselves to do, what they were being asked to do. So yeah, it was a really enjoyable culture to be part of.
I noticed that you first went to university or college, depending on the listener, whatever they call it, to do business and marketing. Mm-hmm. What influenced you to then go and study sports psychology?
I went to college first to go to college, I guess. Right. So I was like, for business and marketing, I didn't, be honest with you, have too much interest in marketing, but I just fell into it, kind of thing. But I was always trying to find a way to work in sports. Even back then, I had played with Galway United, and then I was doing some work with Galway United on the business side when Nick Leeson was there. Just trying to get involved in the sports side of things. But I wanted to be actually really involved. I wanted to be on the actual sports side of things, not the business side of things. And being the business side of things for a little while just reinforced that I wanted to be on the sports side of things, not the business side of things.
Okay.
So I had, from a young enough age, I guess, like as in teenager, early 20s, became aware of sports psychology, but not really sure what it was. So I was fascinated by the idea, but I'd seen, like, I'm big into American sports as well. So I'd seen a lot of American athletes talking about, some of the mental training they were doing, some guys in the NBA and guys in the NFL. So I looked into that kind of thing, and I just became obsessed with it to the point where ended up being my master's, and having to, like, I had to do bridging courses in psychology and all this kind of stuff to qualify to get into my master's course.
I've got a lot of questions around the sports, the psychology side of things before we get into that, because that will be the main core part of our conversation today. A couple of things I know about you. I like to get the guests or the listeners to feel like they know the guests. They now know you grew up in Galway and impact and early influences, but you're a dog owner, a father. You own a guitar or play the guitar. I don't know if it's answered yes to both.
Oh, I just turned 40 last year, and my wife bought me a guitar because I've been talking about doing it, but I'd never done it. So, and especially during the lockdown and everything, it was a great time to learn. So she bought me a guitar for my birthday, and I've been
jamming away,
practicing and playing, and again just became obsessed with it. So making sure I get my time every day practicing and working on it, and it's like any skill. It's the same. Learning guitar is the same as learning jiu-jitsu, is the same as playing sports, it's the same as anything. It's just how much time are you going to put into it, how dedicated are you going to be to it, how much are you learning from what you've already done, and then you will see the improvements over time. And I can actually now play a few things where people can recognize what it is, which is,
congrats.
It's pretty cool.
You've also played football at a relatively decent level. You mentioned Galway United. Is there anything that you're into or curious about that not a lot of people would know about you?
What I'm into that I don't know. I mean, I'm big into traveling and seeing other cultures, I guess. So I've traveled a lot. Been to every continent at this stage, and spent a decent amount of time in places like Vietnam, Zambia, Peru, just where it's completely different culture. But I just love experiencing that, kind of throwing myself in, trying to find out how things really work over there, going past that kind of superficial level where the tourists are tend to be, and want to get to know people and what's really going on. So that's a big thing. There's a few places left I want to go. I want to go to Japan that I haven't been, and there's a few other places I want to see. But yeah, I've been lucky enough so far to travel as much as I have.
Dope. Getting into sports, there's kind of two forks in the road. You can either go down team sport, for example, hurling, Gaelic football, part of a team, or individual sport. You reference jiu-jitsu. I imagine that a loss in an individual sport is harder to overcome than a loss as part of a team. If you focus on football and jiu-jitsu, you might play football weekly. You might play grapple and jiu-jitsu once a quarter. You could say, no, I disagree with you in here, but do you believe that a loss can be used to drive future learning?
I believe everything can be used to drive future learning. So whether that's a team sport thing or an individual sport, or something in business or whatever, it became like a catchphrase almost, win or learn. But why not learn just learn, like as in learn, win, learn, doesn't matter. You have an experience, and you have an opportunity to learn from it. So most of my work with athletes has been with fighters, MMA fighters, UFC athletes that people would be aware of UFC. And like I've worked with athletes in loads of other sports, but predominantly MMA. And there's a fight. You were working up to a fight. They have the fight. They either win or lose. And the natural, easy thing is, if you lose, it forces you to reflect and figure out what went wrong and what could be done better. And you see guys make adjustments in their training or in their level of commitment or sleep or nutrition or whatever it might be that they're working on, even changing gyms and things like that. But I always talk to my athletes after the performance. It doesn't matter the result, because sometimes a win can cover up cracks that that need to be fixed. So whether we win or lose, or it's a draw, or whatever the result, we will do a session about taking lessons from this, not just from the fight itself, but from the preparation. Maybe there was things in the build-up that could have been done a lot better. Even things like small little details, like when lads have to weigh in the day before the fight, been working towards the weigh-in, and then they weigh in Friday, they make the weight, and sometimes they go nuts with what they're having after they weigh in, because they've been craving all this stuff all, for
like food wise, you're talking.
What's that?
You're talking about they just go nuts eating food.
Yeah, they don't eat nuts; they eat crap. So and fill themselves up, because they've been craving it for so long, that they just go berserk and eat loads of stuff, and then feel horrible the next day. And it's fight day that day, So they've lost the connection between why they were actually weighing in. It's for the fight the next day. So nutrition is still connected to performance. We have to separate the weigh-in as being one thing, but you're still on nutrition, you're still on performance mode here. So there's been a few cases of that with a few different lads. That seems like a small thing, but that can have a big impact on how you perform the next day. So there's loads of things like that that can happen in the build-up. Like
it's always interesting
to be taking lessons.
It's always interesting to see the little small things that can have a big impact. I've spoken recently to a couple of people about the importance of sleep, and someone said there's a great sleep expert that like it's the greatest performance enhancing drug that an athlete can take that's legal. The likes of Roger Federer will sleep 10 to 11 hours a day. Usain Bolt will do 9 hours with naps throughout the day, and like these small things you're talking about, nutrition as well. And you've talked about UFC athletes. If I'm not mistaken, I think Max Holloway eats like sugary foods the day between weigh-in and his fight as well. And I don't know what impact that could have. I don't know if he does or doesn't anymore, but I know he's spoken about that he has in the past. Do you see a difference between the most committed athletes in all aspects and those that and others who don't have that full level of commitment, like you talk about? It's not over till you get into that ring.
Oh yeah, I mean, for sure. Like it's so easy to have a goal, right? Like, and when I start working with, let's keep it on the topic of fighters. When I start working with a fighter, one of my first questions to them is, what's your goal here with this? What do you want to achieve? And they'll all say UFC champion, or they'll say make it into the UFC or whatever. But some of them are actually living the life that leads them down that path, and others are far from it, and they don't even realize how far from it they are. And it's just, whether it's delusion or whether it's just a lack of knowledge, or they've been sheltered from reality or whatever it might have been. But there's a level of discipline and a level of commitment that's needed to be an elite athlete that regular people on the street couldn't even comprehend.
Would you be able to paint an idea of what like that a day or a week might look like for an elite athlete?
It's so boring most of the time. You can't even believe how boring it would be. Now, it's better if you love training, if you love what you're doing, if you love the sport, if you're obsessed with the sport, because then it's not boring, right? Then it's enjoyable because you're going in and you're working on your craft and you're working with your teammates, because even though it's an individual sport, you're still working away with teammates and training partners. But is that noise in the background?
No, you're all right. It's not too heavy.
Okay. Hopefully it stops in a few seconds. But yeah, so to a regular person, it would be boring because you're training, resting, eating clean, training again, resting, eating clean, bed early, up, food clean, hydrate, train, rest, eat clean, bed. I'm doing it with that tone on purpose because that's the way it is.
Weeks on end.
And people picture all the money and all the fame and all, but the level of discipline that's required for true elitism in sports. And I've been lucky enough to be around athletes at the top of their sports, and seen the, what it takes to get to that level. And most are not capable of sticking the course because there will be setbacks along the way, for sure. Whether that's losses or injuries, or you put in a great performance and you have a great win and you expected XYZ to happen afterwards and it doesn't. And so all these different kind of setbacks, but then to stay the course, even through all of that stuff, hoping that it works out, like believing that it does, but you're still hoping because there's luck involved and everything as well. So it's when I watch two top fighters or watching top athletes perform, I'm always amazed at the level of dedication it has taken them to get there. People talk about natural ability and natural talent, and to me that's doing a complete disservice to the work ethic and the commitment and the discipline that athlete has had to show to get to this point.
Yeah, for sure. Something I'm going to focus on your craft here, which is, UFC, MMA athletes, not UFC specifically, but just for the purpose of this conversation, and the questions that I'm going to ask. I've watched some press conferences. I'm a fan of MMA athletes. And sometimes you'll see one fighter say, when he stands off and looks into another fighter's eyes, he looked nervous, he didn't want to look at me, blah, 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 blah. But I've also heard that from other people I'm heavily involved in the business world, that like nerves are good. Nerves show that you care, that you're invested. So is it okay to be nervous? Does it show that you care? Or like, where's the line between your opponent going, I know he's fucked, to you having, because I'm sure all fighters have some form of nervous, especially when they enter the arena 3 hours before they fight.
It'd be a weirdo that doesn't have nerves heading into a fight. and like you there has to be something kind of wrong with you, bordering on sociopath, if you're going into a fight against another trained man in front of a crowd, or a trained woman if it's women's MMA, and you're not feeling any nerves or fears or doubts. That would be, I've never experienced it ever with any athlete, and I would worry about that person outside of fighting if they had that. It's normal, it's okay. We don't need to make it a thing. It's just part of the experience. It's just part of the experience of challenging yourself to this extreme level of competing in MMA. So nerves and fears and doubts, they're fine. And the idea then that someone is trying to talk about what the other person is feeling, and their opponent doesn't want it and doesn't want to be there, and they're beaten before the fight and all this. That's all just talk. That's just talk.
That's a Zelda fight.
I mean, it can definitely, like, the mind games can work if you allow them to impact you. All like mind games are just people saying stuff, or their body language and things like that. But that doesn't need to have any impact on you whatsoever. If you allow it to, when you start to make something out of it and starts to impact how you're feeling and how you're performing, then it's worked. But again, it wasn't the mind games themselves that worked. It was you allowing that stuff to impact you. So we can prepare for that. Like I've had fighters who have competed against people who tend to talk a lot of trash in the build up. We can just talk about that and kind of plan for that ahead and know what's be expected there. We've also had guys who like to talk trash, but again, if you need your opponent to show some kind of impact and show that it's getting to them, then that's your fault, because what happens when they don't show some frailty? If they stand up to what you're saying and they don't really care, and then it can backfire. So I just want my athletes to just go out and express themselves as they wish, without trying to think about what it's doing to the opponent or what the opponent's doing to them. Just focus on yourself, focus on your own controllables.
Dave Collins says that there's 9 psychological characteristics to developing excellence, one of them being creating and using support networks. How important are support networks? Yeah,
I mean, one of the controllables, I talk about things being controllable or non-controllable for athletes. Controllables are things like the basic stuff, like your nutrition, your sleep, being organized, as in being on time for certain things, or having all your equipment, all that boring stuff. How you prepare and training, the effort that you're putting in, the way you're talking to yourself, the way you perform on fight night, and your support network, and who you choose to allow to impact you, who you choose to allow their words to have any meaning at all. So you have to know who's in your circle, who matters to you, whether that's friends and family and teammates, coaches, partner, whatever. But some random guy on Twitter can't be in your circle. If he's talking to you and saying some stuff, that shouldn't have no impact. Now, it's not as easy as saying that. Just, it can be tough. It's when athletes reach a certain level of fame, they don't just start getting fans, they start getting haters, and that can get to you if you're not aware of it. So just being aware of who gets to actually, whose words matter. So when they say something, it really does impact you. That's important, and knowing that that's within your control, who's in that circle. Now, it can't just be that you want to be surrounded by yes men. That's not going to work. Sometimes what you want to hear is not what you need to hear, and you need to have people around you and be strong enough to have people around you that are going to tell you things that you need to hear. That's an important thing that I definitely reinforce with athletes is their support circle and network around them.
Body language, and as I'm asking these questions, I'm hoping that people can take lessons from this, because a lot of our listeners are probably not elite MMA athletes and they're business owners, and they can correlate the differences between what you're talking about in business. But body language in the role of an athlete's mood, does it play a role in an athlete's mood, their body language, when they're standing tall with their shoulders back and walking with confidence, compared to potentially slouched and like wearing a suit and feeling good? Do all those things matter in terms of the mood that the individual's in? Can they enhance that?
They can matter, but they better not be all you're doing, because then it's a house of cards. So when I'm talking about confidence with athletes, you have to earn confidence. You can't just feel confident and look good and then go out and do it. You have to have put the work in. Confidence comes from the preparation, the work you've put in. Can you imagine you're backstage, right? You're warmed up, you've got your gloves on, you've got your shorts on, you've done your warm up, and a runner comes backstage and says, okay, you're up next. And you make a walk from a dressing room through the backstage area to the curtain where the music's playing, and you walk through the curtain and you walk into an arena full of people, and you walk down to a cage, and there's a guy in there who has trained for 8 weeks in advance, and he's a professional fighter. I don't care how you walk out is it, the confidence for that is about your work. Did you put the work in? Yes or no? If you put the work in, then you can be confident. So there's too much, I think, made of the stuff that goes on top of that without people actually doing the work. Because if, like, for sure, if you put the work in, and you have really truly dedicated and committed and were diligent in your preparation, and you didn't cut corners, you really put the work in, you can be proud of that and be confident in that, and confident in your ability then to go out and do the task at hand. Now, will your body language matter at that stage? A little bit, you know. You want to carry yourself in such a way where you've you know, because you've earned the right to carry yourself in that way. And you know, you can get definitely, you can definitely, if you've got cool gear on, that can have an impact on you for sure. Feeling good going out there, excited to go out. But I think too often people try to imitate what they see on the outside, on the surface, from people who are high performers. So they see the look, and they try to copy the look without really understanding that there's so much more to it than that. There's the work that has to have gone in underneath it. If you put the work in, then yeah, cool, go look good. But if you haven't put the work in and you put on a suit, you're just fooling yourself and everyone else around you.
Good point.
And people will see through that, and it will fall down very, very quickly. So that's, you know, that's my my take on confidence always is you earn confidence by the way you work and prepare. Then the extra stuff can matter. Yeah, for sure, on top of it.
Anytime I've ever been angry or frustrated, and anyone turns around to me and says, calm down, it's never going to calm me down. It does the complete opposite of that. It makes me more riled up. So when you're trying to, let's say, calm down a fighter after a round that may have not went their way, how important of a role does breath control play?
Yeah, I mean, it's less calming them down, and it's more getting them focused on what matters, right? So in between rounds, like you gave the example there, where a round has not gone your way, as in you've clearly lost the round and we're nearly finished or something like that. You come back to your corner, you're tired and you're frustrated, yeah, but you're also, if you're not careful, you can start beating yourself up mentally with your self-talk. Focusing on how bad this is, how heavy he feels on top, how tired you feel, how this didn't go what you wanted, that mistake you made and how bad it was. So what I always want my fighters to do in those between round times is, yes, take your breath for sure, to just slow it down. Don't, like, people have a tendency to pant instead of breathe when they're tired. Slow your breath down, control breathing. Take control of your breathing, you recover quicker. But then get your mind back to now. Get your mind back to where you need to be, which is listening to your coach's instructions, because your coach is giving you instructions for what, you know, to correct what just happened. So you need to be in a place to hear that and take that on board. And then you also need to be in a place to go and perform the next round. So if you're carrying the last round into this one, it's a terrible place to be. You want to be switched on, back, refocused on where you are now. So recognizing that you've lost the focus, letting go of the round. If it was a bad round, it's over, it's done. I can't do anything about it now. Let's go here and let's start. Let's at least be mentally here now. Because if we're mentally in round one, heading into round two, round two is going to be worse. It's just going to spiral down. So
yeah,
recognizing that focus is not where it needs to be, because focus is never lost. It's just somewhere else. You never lose focus. You're just focused on something different than you need to be focused on. So knowing what you need to be focused on is important, but then making sure that you are focused and concentrated on that thing. You know, that's another skill. And we work on this kind of stuff. It's not, you can't just turn it on come fight night. We work on this in sparring and in training and even conditioning sessions, where, you know, you can start to focus on how hard this is, how tough this is, how tired you are, how You have to pay that bill when you go home. How you just had a fight with your partner before you left, and all these different things that can be going on. You have to let that stuff go and get focused on what you're doing right now. So the more you practice that in training, the easier it is obviously to do it when it counts on the high pressure of a fight night.
You look in great shape for 40 years old. Do you still grapple yourself?
Well, yeah, I can't wait to get back. So the gym is open on July 5th. Back again. I've missed it so much. I think more than anything else during the lockdown, I've missed grappling. That's the thing that I have missed the most. I mean, I miss going to the pub and having a few pints with the lads and all that stuff, of course, and going out for dinner. But I miss grappling strangers, hugging strangers more than anything else on the mat. So I can't wait to get back and get going again. So I'm getting my vaccine at the weekend, and then I can't wait to things to get back. And hopefully one of the big things that happens when things start to get back to normal is people appreciate normal more than they used to. And I know from my perspective, for sure, I will not take for granted going into a class of jiu-jitsu or a grappling class and getting to train. I'll be grateful for that every time I get to do it, because I know how horrible it was having it taken away for so long.
If you were to ever write a book, what would the title be?
It's a good question. You want to be careful. I guess maybe I'll come to an answer to that by the end of this little rant I'll do. But I've seen too many books that try to simplify something, and then that becomes the thing that it's all about, and it loses a lot of the other details that matter.
Yeah.
It becomes like a catchphrasey thing, and then that becomes the thing that it's the easy takeaway, but that's like the surface stuff, and you've missed all the foundational stuff. So it might be something, I don't know, like about how there's no shortcuts, because people are looking for shortcuts. That's why a lot of people are reading like sports psychology style books or those kind of things, looking for the answer, looking for the thing that's going to make the difference and be the shortcut, the magic trick that's going to work. And there is no such thing. So it might be something like that. There is no shortcut. That might be the title.
Yeah, you could be a contradiction and say the silver bullet to whatever, and then the first page is there is no silver bullet.
Yeah. But people titles matter. People won't read that first page. They'll just read that title. So I would probably call it there is no shortcuts. There is no silver bullet. Yeah.
I like it. Dave, I've had a pleasure chatting to you over the last 35 minutes to get a greater understanding of your world. And I hope my listeners can bridge some gaps between or correlations between the world of elite athletes and business. But from my side, I wish you all the best and nothing but the best and continued success going forward.
Cool. Thanks, Rian. I've enjoyed this a lot. I could have kept going for a lot longer. This was fun.